Dale, before God, family, and friends, I commit myself to you in marriage for life, and as a symbol of my love for you, I give you this ring. I accept you as my husband.
I am the youngest of 12 children, born to Ben and Tina Weave Workentine in Dinuba, California. My mother cried out, "Eureka!" when I was born. I enjoyed my childhood and teen years, playing sports, hunting, and being with family and friends. In 1976, I began my pastoral ministry in Winkler, Manitoba, as associate pastor in the Mennonite Brethren Church.
I am the middle child of 6, 3 boys, then 3 girls, and middle of those girls born to Lee and Ada Schouten Nussbaum in our home near Orville, Ohio. My family lived on a small acreage and enjoyed homemade ice cream in summer, thanks to our cow and chickens, and home canned fruits and vegetables in the winter. A degree in home economics led me to my career as a teacher at Garden Valley Collegiate. Now, there were not many eligible men in small-town Winkler at that time, and I eventually made plans for my future as a single-home economist, with some pretty exciting options for my future.
Before Marge went to Canada, I felt that Marge was just going to be all independent, never need a man in her life at all. But that, of course, we all know has changed. And now I know that this is what the good Lord had for her and for Dale.
I also knew that if marriage was in my future, my best choice would be a car mechanic. "Remind me never to marry a pastor" was said more than once during those years.
Many couples need a friend that plays Cupid in their life. John and Ruth Jansen was our Cupid. Listen to their story.
We got to know Dale and Marge in Winkler. While we were living in Winkler, Dale was our youth pastor at the Winkler MB Church, and Marge was home ec teacher in Garden Valley Collegiate. And we came to the conviction that they would be just an awesome couple together. They're both eligible, they're both Christian professionals, they both came from the States, they were American citizens. They seem to have compatibility, and I think would have passed any test of that nature. So being convinced that they would make an awesome couple and that they were hungry for love, we embarked on a strategy. And I'm not a very good matchmaker. Ruth is much better at that, so she got involved with some of the details, and I'm going to let her talk about those.
I believe that we had told Dale about Marge and Marge about Dale, but how to really introduce them. We didn't want to be too pushy in this whole thing, so one day we invited Marge for a supper, and I believe there was another teacher we invited too. And later she said she had thought if we had invited that Dale Workentine over for supper, she would be really upset. So we were still in her good books. We hadn't done it, but the challenge still remained. Then, quite a long time after that, Garden Valley Collegiate put on a workshop to which they invited the public. I decided to go. Dale went. We met there in the foyer, and so we were going to walk into the theater together. And wouldn't you believe it? That was the lucky day. He walked right into the row where Marge was sitting. He led the way, I followed, and I was able to introduce them to each other that day. Even after that, not much happened. Then one day, after church, he came over, and we started talking about his romantic life.
So my pointed question to Dale was, "Dale, how's your love life?" And Dale said, "Well, nothing much happening." And I said, "Well, get with it, man. Get with the agenda already. Put it on your scheduler or something. Take your bike. You got a 55 Chevy. That's a very, very attractive car. Take your bike, pedal down, do whatever you need to do. invite her for coffee, go down to 13th Street, I believe it was, and the rest, I guess there's lots of stuff happening that we don't know about. It was undercover. I mean, we didn't know about it. And the rest, I think, is history.
As I was thinking about dating Marge, I decided that it would be a good idea if I would go out and get a few references on her. So I talked with some of her colleagues at Garden Valley Collegiate. They were all very consistent in their message. She's a good teacher. She's a person of good Christian faith. She's honest. The young people love her. I couldn't go wrong. One person did offer a little warning. He looked at me and he said, "Dale, she is a very independent woman."
Hi, my name was Dorothy Elias when I met Marge Nussbaum on the very first day of our school year when we taught for the Garden Valley School Division. And we became very good friends after that day. And then in 1978, Marge moved to 14th Street, right where I'm standing here, although this isn't the same house. It was a little house where she lived. And that's the house where Dale came visiting on a church visiting night. And after that, he came visiting regularly. And I also met, during that time, I also met Alan Unruh, and we went on a triple Sadie Hawkins date to Winnipeg. And after that, our friendship became a foursome.
In 1978, I was home for American Thanksgiving. While there, I asked my parents the question, how do I know what Marge's level of commitment is to me? This was plaguing me. How do I know for sure what her level of commitment is? My parents asked another question. They said, when Marge makes a commitment, when she makes a promise, does she follow through? Does she keep her promises? I said yes. At that point, all doubts evaporated.
Soon after that, the wedding bells were ringing, and they lived happily ever after.
Dale and Marge and Ellen and myself both got engaged in 1979 and got married 2 weeks apart from each other, July 1st and July 14th. Even though Marge vowed she would never marry a pastor, she was very happy that day. And the building behind me is the PWN's concert hall, and that's where the Winkler Mennonite Brethren Church used to be, and that's the place where Dale and Marge got married. I was very privileged to be Marge's bridesmaid and to read scripture during their service.
This is the place where it all happened, July 14th, 1979. You got married at the Winkler MB Church. Well, I got to know you, Marge, in high school as you were a staff advisor. We worked on the yearbook advertising committee, and Dale, I was part of your youth group. I certainly appreciated all the input you put into my life back then. And yeah, then as you were preparing to get ready for your wedding, you asked me if I would play a piece on the piano, the Music Box Dancer, and that is what's being played right now. So it was a privilege to be a bit part of your wedding.
Yes, we were ready for our big day. Sometime before this day, God had helped me to realize that Dale being a pastor was okay with me. What could be a more important calling than helping people spiritually? Our wedding celebration began with Dale in his 55 Chevy picking me up at my house. A prayer together of gratefulness and asking for God's blessing, and we were off to Winkler Park, ready to celebrate with our friends and family at our pre-wedding reception. We were blessed to have many of our family and friends join us on this special day.
Love is always patient and kind. It is never jealous. Love is never boastful.
And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love.
friends John and Lillian Kuhl graciously hosted a lunch following the service. This was one very special, memorable day for us.
One year after Marge and I were married, our church asked if we would consider taking in a young fellow by the name of Hip Bowie, who was a part of the boat people that the Winkler Mennonite Brethren Church had sponsored the year before. They didn't know what to do with Hip because he was a single boy, he was 14 years old, and he had come with extended family, and they needed room somewhere for him. So they asked Marge and I if we would consider taking him in. We lived in a very small home at that time, 640 square feet, 2-bedroom. And first we said, our house is too small. But then God impressed upon us, the house is not too small if your heart is big. But if your heart is small, even a big house will be too small. We took Hip in.
So Hip lived with us in our home for 4 years there in Winkler. And while he lived with us, lots happened. He learned English, he graduated from high school, he passed his driver's test, he was baptized at our church, and he introduced Dale and I to lots of Vietnamese friends and to Vietnamese cuisine, which he enjoyed cooking. So our parenting began for Dale and I with a 14-year-old. You know, the positive experience we had of Hip living with us just a year after we were married, I think led us to continue sharing our home with others and encouraged us to keep on connecting with people of other cultures. Yes, not too many years passed before our home went from 2 with Dale and I to 3 to 4 to 5. During the 4 years he lived with us, Hip helped us name our children. On September 29, 1982, Michael Lynn joined our family. He came complete with Dale's dimple in his chin and easily and happily adjusted to whatever event we took him to or whatever schedule we were doing that day. About 18 months after Michael joined our family, Lori Ahn was born on March 22, 1984. She came with a bit of curly hair and the determined personality that she still has today. Very shortly after Lori was born, our church conference invited us to go to Flin Flon, way up north, to start a church, to plant a church. Oh my, Flin Flon, that's way, way up north. And you know, at that point, Dale and I had barely explored beyond Winnipeg. Plus, at that time, I had this idea in my mind that a really neat thing to do would be, while our children were little, was to be employed and pursue my career as a home economist and have Dale be the stay-at-home parent. Well, a 6 to 7 year commitment going to Flin Flon, definitely those two plans did not fit together. I believe God helped me to remember the story of Abraham, where he was obedient to God and was willing to sacrifice his son to be obedient. The sacrifice that I would need to make, the dream I would need to give up, was nothing compared to the sacrifice that Abraham was willing to make. So we moved to Flin Flon. The end of October 1984, we headed north to Flin Flon with our 2 babies. Michael was just 2 and Lori was about 6 months, to start the church, to gather together believers to begin the church in Flin Flon. What an opportunity it was for Dale and I to work together. Through it all, I think we discovered that we were compatible, which we knew before that, but we were more than compatible. We believed that God gifted us in ways that would complement each other, in ways that would help us to build that church, and in ways that would help us to have a strong marriage. Our kids were born in Winkler, but Flin Flon was the only home they really knew. Listen to Michael and Lori now as they share some of their memories of being our kids.
One word that I would use to describe my parents' marriage, I think it would have to be solid.
So I have 3 words to describe my parents' marriage: peaceful, uncomplicated, and stable. What a gift that has been to me. So how did my parents impact me to become the person I am today? As I was thinking about this, I realized that my parents taught me to swim upstream, counterculturally, to follow my convictions, my beliefs, and Jesus, and do hard things with courage and live with contentment.
How did my family impact who I am today? They really supported a lot of the interests I had when I was a kid, that I'm kind of still doing today. So music, they always, at first I think they kind of like pushed us into it, but then they always supported it as I kind of found my way in the things I liked. Other things like sports, I was a soccer player ever since I can remember. I'm still playing soccer today, although I'm a little bit slower, a lot more sore for the next couple of days, but still doing it. One of the memories from my childhood was the summer trips that we went on. We would go on these month-long road trips, super long car drives, but we always had a good time. Or, I don't know, maybe not, but that's what I remember. Things like sleeping in the car, one of us on the back seat, one of us on the floor. My mom would pack little treats or toys for us to play with, or we'd get one each day to kind of keep us entertained. So that was a lot of fun, and we were always going down to see family in the States, and we get to see other people we knew along the way.
Kind of an interesting memory or fact about our household growing up, our family, was that pretty much the only days that we had just the 4 of us, nobody else, was Christmas Day and the endless hours of driving to California and Ohio every summer.
One of the things I remember when I was a kid was always around Christmas time. We'd get to stay up late on Christmas Eve. There would be a Christmas Eve service at church. And I remember it would always be super dark out, but we had all the lights going. I always found it a lot of fun and something different than usual. Christmas mornings as a kid was always a lot of fun. Obviously there's the presents that all the kids like, but we always had special food on Christmases, so we'd have our shrimp dip with pretzels and bugles. We'd have our eggnog, all sorts of delicious things that we would only get once a year. I think we'd usually do dinosaur eggs as well, which were one of my favorites. When I was a kid, we had a subscription to some magazine. I think it was called Chickadee or something like that for kids. And I think it had a programming section in it, or maybe once in a while it had something, and it would come with kind of the program that you could copy out and build a game. The one I remember building is some cavern that you're falling down, and you're basically just trying to avoid the walls. But that was probably my first programming experience, which kind of set me up for what I do now, I guess. So thanks for that subscription, Mom and Dad. What was it like being one of my parents' kids? One of the things I remember is a lot of trust. I never had a real curfew or control from their side on things that I wanted to listen to as music, or they got us the internet and didn't really do a whole lot of monitoring. So I remember, just feeling a strong sense of trust from my parents.
So what was it like being the daughter of Marge and Dale Workentine? I would say that they created enough boundaries for us that we felt safe and secure, but then they also gave us so much freedom to explore and become our own individual person.
Our house was like a second home for a lot of my friends. Often there would be 1 or 2 of them that would come over and have lunch with us. They'd be over after school. My parents were always very welcoming to all of my friends. And
the main way that I would say our family was different from others was its outward focus. The hospitality and the open door culture that was created in our home. There were always people in and out, eating with us, living with us, just hanging out. Everyone knew that they were welcome at any time. And that I think is quite unique and beautiful.
In the spring, I went up to do a rural practicum. You allowed me to stay at your house, and very grateful for that, as you guys have always been very hospitable and supportive.
And my parents created a big and rich community around my brother and I, even though we live thousands of miles from our actual extended family.
Growing up, there was so much good food. Thanks, Mom. Lots of home-cooked meals. I mean, mostly home-cooked meals. Very rarely was it, eat out or frozen, whatever. So I remember that a lot. I mean, Dad cooked too. He made, some of my favorites are from him as well. So you got tacos and Vietnamese fried rice and all that good stuff.
Some of my greatest memories of my mom and dad were the funny and also meaningful conversations that we had around the dinner table over lunch and dinner. That's where we spent the most quality time together.
My parents were really involved with Simon House Bible Camp when I was growing up. My dad was on the board. I think we'd be out there for, a bunch in the summer. There would be retreats in the winter. So Simon House was a place I spent a lot of time, had a lot of fun, a lot of good times in the outdoors, although sometimes I'd rather be on my computer. Yeah, kind of felt like I owned the place sometimes and probably annoyed the crap out of some of the people that work there, but what can you do?
Another memory I have is being woken up at midnight, being wrapped in blankets and sitting out on our deck, which overlooked the lake and where the fireworks went off on the 1st of July. And then we would crawl back into bed and go back to sleep. As the daughter of financially wise and frugal parents, we were limited to powdered skim milk and regulated amounts of orange juice and very strictly enforced sizes of thickness of cheese. It didn't matter. That was our normal. That was life. Our tummies always had enough to eat, and there was always room for another person around our table.
One of the ways that our family is different from most other families, my parents are both American, but they're from opposite sides of the U.S. and they met in Winkler, Manitoba. So that, to me, feels like there was a very large chance that I would not exist, and a very, very tiny one that I do, and somehow it happened.
In June of 2004, our 20-year-old Lori suddenly announced that she was getting married. 4 months later, on October 9, 2004, Josh Pauls, a college friend from Medstead, Saskatchewan, joined our family. They chose a beautiful, warm fall day for their outdoor wedding in the park.
As I try to think of a first impression of Dale and Marge, I have a hard time thinking about it because I was mostly thinking about their daughter. About 16 years ago was the first time that I met Dale and Marge. Their house was busy. I don't actually remember them being around much, but I do remember a lot of other college and career age kids having a party for New Year's, and they definitely just made their house a safe place for many people. An early memory of Mom was having her sitting on the floor in our living room, her sitting with a bandaged knee, not letting much stop her, but wanting to be involved and wanting to be helpful, and pulling nails out of baseboards so that we could clean them up and get them put back on. I really respect Dad's adventurous spirit. He likes to make things creative. He likes to have fun. He enjoys the conversations that can be had anywhere, whether it's sitting around a fire, out on a zip lining course, out at a small ski hill, or out in a canoe on an adventure with a bunch of men. I have really loved how Dad and Mom have been always ready to come and bail me out of the latest project that we've gotten ourselves into. I think they continued to desire to take care of their daughter, and I'm incredibly thankful for that.
Michael moved to Toronto as a 17-year-old and spent quite a few years finding his way into adulthood. Playing soccer was one of his hobbies, and it was there that he met Lindsay Godet from St. John, New Brunswick. They were married on August 3rd, 2014, and we all enjoyed a trip to the East Coast for their wedding. I was privileged to officiate at their wedding, and they provided me with a challenge to limit my message to only 3 minutes.
A memory that I have of when I first met you guys would be learning to play Settlers. So that was just seemed like a really big thing in your family, like games in general, but Settlers of Catan in particular. Big learning curve for me. You know, every time we played, I tried to figure out your strategies and how could I potentially win against this family when they've been playing for so many years together. But it's always been a lot of fun, and it's something that seems to be like a tradition. Anytime we get together, we always do our Settlers games, and it's something that I really enjoy when we bring the family together. One of the first impressions I had of your family was that you guys had a really awesome sense of community and helping others. You guys seemed like you were always there, you know, to help out, whether it's, you know, building something with somebody or to bring someone into the house for a meal or a bed. It seemed like you guys were always there and willing to volunteer in the community as well, and around the world from your travels. So, you know, that was something that I really, you know, valued with your family. Congratulations on 40 years. That's pretty amazing.
Being grandparents has been a unique and special part of our life journey. Not only has it been wonderful developing relationships and spending time with these 3 little ones, Kaylin, Rhea, and Zachary, but we have also enjoyed observing our children in their role as parents.
What I love about Papa is that he's very funny and he makes me and Rhea laugh a lot. What I love about Grandma is that she's kind and generous, and she even paid for my piano lessons. I like Grandma because she's calm. I like Grandma because she's loving. I like Grandma because she reads me stories like Owl Baby. What I love doing with Papa is drawing with him and going on bike rides and seeing God's beauty. I like Papa because he's funny. I like Papa because he takes me on bike rides. I like Papa because he draws with me. I like Papa because he takes me in his old car and drives to the ice cream place. What I love doing with my grandma is singing and playing the ukulele with her.
Can you say, love you? Love you. Can you say it for Papa and Grandma? Say, love you. Love you. Love.
True.
Say, love.
True.
No, love.
Love you.
Papa
Papa.
and Grandma.
Mama.
Say, happy
Happy.
Nana
Nana.
Versary.
Happy.
Papa
Papa.
and Grandma.
Mama. We have the best grandparents ever!
Consistent. Supportive. Intentional. Respectful. An example for others.
So the memory that I have to share is kind of embarrassing. but it also really shows a different side of Marge and Dale's marriage. One day I was at their place, because I was always at their place, but one in particular, I was showering and I forgot to close the door. And I guess Dale thought that Marge was having the shower, but in fact it was me. And he didn't see anything, but he reached his hand into the shower, and when I saw a hand in the shower, I freaked out. And he quickly ran away, and I looked back, and he's like, sorry, I thought you were Marge. And as a teenager, I thought that was so weird. However, shows you that their marriage also had a really playful and passionate side, and that is very admirable and very important. And I don't know if they'll include this clip. It's okay if you don't. But I just thought it was really funny and also very telling of the different sides of a relationship.
I got to know Dale and Marge in my early 20s, and I was over at my parents for lunch one time when Dale popped over to borrow something from my dad. And they found out that I was looking for a place to rent, but I wasn't so sure I wanted to rent underneath a pastoral couple. I sort of was running away from church at the time, and Dale seemed like a pretty nice guy, and he was offering a very good price on the rental, and so I took him up on it. So I had a great opportunity to kind of watch Dale and Marge raise their family while I'm living underneath them, and they're always very welcoming for people to come over for supper and for visit and for coffee, and Dale every now and then would come down and knock on my door and say, hey, we're having a supper and a movie on Sunday night, why don't you come up and join us? And so I did, and I found out that their traditional Sunday supper was popcorn and ice cream all the time, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird, It was good, and I was kind of wondering, well, what kind of movies do these guys watch? And it wasn't just about the movie. We'd always kind of pick out some of the life issues that were happening in these movies, and we would always have great discussions about them, and that's one of the things that I admired most about their marriage is the time they took to discuss life issues, with their kids. And Marge would be very quick to put on a coffee or bring out the cookies or the muffins or whatever, and Dale was always quick to have a quirky joke or come up with some sort of trivial news article that he would just kind of pull out of nowhere, and Marge would sort of roll her eyes, but we'd always end up having a lot of laughter, and I think that's one of the things that I noticed most was the laughter in their house, and watching Michael and Lori grow up and watching how they raised their kids. What I seen was the love and respect with their kids. Yeah, so to sum it all up, I'll leave it with those three things there that really struck me the most about Dale and Marge's marriage as was the love, the laughter, and the respect.
When they moved up to Flin Flon, Irma, another friend, and Jennifer, my daughter, and I, we went to visit them regularly, and we were always very encouraged when we went to visit them. Alan had passed away from cancer, and they had moved away from friends and family, and so that was a very encouraging time for all of us.
In 2003, the church conference here in Manitoba invited Dale and I to begin another work, this time in the south, in Carman. And so by that time, Michael and Lori had both left home to go to school, but it was a very difficult decision for us to leave our home of nearly 19 years. There were the trees and the lakes, but the more important thing to leave and the harder thing to leave was our friends and our church family. We did feel, though, that the timing was right, and we came to believe that God was leading us into another change.
The memory I have of Dale and Marge is sitting on the committee called Kids Club that was formed when they newly arrived. I gladly jumped in with both feet, and we spent many, many years on that committee together, planning carrying it out on a weekly basis. What I always appreciated was they allowed me to have the meetings at our house just because I was the one with little kids at the time. And, I would put them to bed, and then the whole group would come over and we'd sit around my dining room table for the next couple of hours planning and plotting and having a lot of fun. I just remember I enjoyed the conversations, the laughter, the discussions we had, the prayers, the food, whoever prepared it for that night. In terms of Dale and Marge's marriage to us younger couples, I see that they have a lot of fun. They're always on to their next adventure. They have an obvious love for both their families, their children, their grandchildren. That's an obvious one. We know when they're going to visit their grandchildren, and they're really excited. It's just awesome to see the love. And I've heard Marge say, well, you just got to pray about it. And I think that's pretty awesome. I think, 40 years is an amazing milestone to hit.
And then when I started dating Brian Dirksen, Dale and Marge welcomed him as a friend as well. And over the last 40 years, I have seen Dale and Marge love and trust God, love their children, their church family, and community very much. They work together well, and they are very hospitable and caring. Plus, they love to laugh a lot. We love spending time with them, and we love you, and may God bless your future. Brian and Dorothy Dirksen.
One of the highlights I enjoy when Marge and Dale come to Wayne County is our early morning chats that Dale and I have cover a multitude of topics, anywhere from politics to finances to theology to just how in the world have you been. And I really respect Dale in what his opinions are and his knowledge. Typically, he and I are up probably a half hour before the ladies get up. So that time we spend drinking coffee and just sitting around and chatting. But I really look forward to that when they come to Wayne County.
At 62 and a half, I retired from pastoral ministry. Well, let's kind of say paid pastoral ministry. But I have really enjoyed it. It's given me an opportunity to reacquaint myself with doing artwork, playing sports like pickleball and curling. Marge has also appreciated my being around more. I clean the house, I do a lot of the cooking, because she is owner-operator of 9 Lives Fashions.
One of the special things about this season of our lives has been more opportunities for travel, which is something I've always enjoyed. These have included several service projects through Mennonite Disaster Service, at Simon House Bible Camp, and at Matthew Training Center in Mexico. In addition to frequent visits to our family, our 2 trips to Europe, Switzerland, Norway, Italy, and Greece were highlights. Dale and I are very grateful to God for our 40 years of marriage and ministry.
And we have grown through serving as a pastoral couple in 3 communities.
We've definitely learned patience through the challenges of parenting.
Several health surprises have helped us to develop fuller trust of God.
And through the years, we've been enriched through many relationships with great people.
And we have seen our family expand, and we are grateful for 3 little ones.
It's been a good life.
We are grateful.
Psalm 91:1. Lord, through all generations, you have been our home.